It's it's an interesting thing when you think of the developments that we've had over hundreds of years. There was an era where it was perfectly acceptable, and we thought it was a perfectly good thing to have slaves, you know. The idea that somebody did your washing and somebody cooked your dinner and cleaned your garden and fetched things for you and did all the work for you that you didn't like, you know. And within the world there was this sense of like, well, within certain parts of the world, there was this sense that that was perfectly okay until somebody stood up and said, there's something wrong with this, you know. Just morally there's something wrong, and there's a huge sort of backlash against that person when they stood up, because the idea that the person was presenting to the majority of people who had slaves was like, well, what am I going to do if I don't have them? How could I, you know, who's going to cut my wheat? I'd have to, you know, or who's going to do my, you know, clean my stables or whatever, you know. And so for many years, you know, they kept on campaigning and saying something needs to change. This isn't right, you know. And they were met with ridicule, you know, absolute ridicule. And it is really interesting just to watch the consciousness of people change over time. And eventually it got to a point where, like, now if you say to somebody, you know, let's start up slavery again, most people's consciousness just doesn't click into a space where they would agree with that. Yet, funnily enough, it seems in society that we've managed to make slaves out of ourselves over the last couple of years. Slaves to progress and work and manufacturing and products, and we have this really interesting path that we're on globally at the moment, which is basically a path towards self-destruction. And I remember somebody saying it before, you know, that human beings are a little bit like, we're like frogs. If you put a frog in a pot of water, and he's swimming around in the pot of water, and then you put the pot of water onto a fire and you start heating the pot up, apparently the frog won't jump out because of the gradual change. He won't notice it won't happen. I remember them comparing it a little bit to humans. We get used to stuff, you know. We get used to the fact that you're in a city, and when you blow your nose after being in a city that's smoggy, it's dirty, and you just get used to that. You get used to the fact that lots of people have cancer. You get used to the fact that you know, that there's rivers that you can't swim in anymore. Maybe not so much over in Iceland yet, but you know, I've seen it a lot in Ireland, and especially in other places. And we just get used to these changes, and for whatever reason, psychologically we haven't seemed to have just clicked into this space where we realize we're slowly destroying ourselves. And then you go, and why, you know? And the way I've gotten to relate to it is that I smoke, you know, and I'm aware that smoking is probably not very good for me, yet I'm addicted to it, probably like those people who are addicted to having slaves, and probably like we're addicted to driving our cars, and we're addicted to those sweets that come in the plastic packages, or those dresses that are made in China and shipped all the way over, or, you know, the scarves or the tights or the whatever it is, the products, you know. Anyway, one day somebody asked me, what do you do for a living? I was sitting somewhere in there, and the answer that came out of my mouth for whatever reason wasn't the romantic answer of, oh, I'm a musician, songwriter, you know. It was like I manufacture plastic and distribute it and heavy goods and people around the world, you know. And I realized that's what I do physically in the world with regard to the earth, with regard to physical things in the world. I manufacture plastic. I'm a plastic manufacturer. And I'd never thought that I'd end up being a plastic manufacturer in my life. So it was a really interesting, and I transport heavy goods and people around the world, so therefore I burn loads of fuel, you know. And I remember doing sort of a rough calculation of sort of a tour I did last year, and the fuel that I burned, or was partially responsible for burning, was like, would completely fill this building here, you know. And I would never, if we filled this building up with a whole pile of fuel, say, hey guys, let's just burn this fuel. Just go to the middle of a field and let's just burn it. Wouldn't it be, we'd have a big bonfire. It'd be like, I'd go, what? It just feels like a sick idea, yet I do it in what I do without noticing that I do it. And I think that's kind of, that's where I come from with all of this stuff, is that I've been doing stuff that I don't even notice that I'm doing because it's all kind of covered up with gloss. So I've been working on, I thought, how can I change this? What can I do? I can stop touring, I can I can just die, you know. And then I thought, no, if I die, I'm going to give off carbon anyway, so it's... So I thought, I am alive, we are alive so far, we're still alive, you know, and that's interesting. And I thought, well, what do I do? I do this thing that I do. How can I, through what I do, actually give something back, as opposed to be taking from nature all the time? You know, taking the stuff that is used to make the plastic, taking the oil, you know, and adding to this gobbling up of green spaces that's been happening. And so I'm making a record with a bunch of friends. And the idea is just to, whatever money is generated from that record, is just to give back in some way. And this morning you know, it's just a small little thing we did with a bunch of kids from the kindergarten, but it was really nice, you know. We just went down and put some trees into the ground and get down on our hands and knees and put the soil in around it, and there's just something nice about that. And I've noticed that I have to schedule that into my days so that I do it, because I've got such a habit of just being lost in the glossy stuff, and you know, that I actually have to schedule stuff like that in, and it's now becoming a bit of a habit, and I'm noticing that I'm much happier for it. Anyway, this song is I wrote in a friend's apartment